welcome to the we're now in the third of 4 debates between hopefuls for the Vermont House of Representatives. My name is Jessie Foran. I'm the managing editor of the News and Citizen and Stowe Reporter. Joining me in moderating tonight is our news editor, Tommy Gardner. This debate is between the two people running for one available seat. That would be a whole different story. In the Lamoille-1 district, which represents the town of Stowe. We have incumbent Heidi Scheuermann, a Republican, and her Democratic challenger, Sabel Courtney. Tonight's debate is being live streamed on the News and Citizen Facebook page, and it is being recorded by Green Mountain Access Television and our paper, so you can watch it if you're not here right now. The debate will proceed as follows. First, the candidates will present their opening statements. Then we will have a number of questions from us, the moderators, and interspersed with that will be 3 rounds of ask your opponent questions. And then we'll have time for rebuttals, follow-ups. We'll see how long you guys talk. At the end, we're going to have a brief closing statement, and then we'll be done.
Okay, so just a quick correction. This is being live streamed on the Stowe Reporter Facebook page. The second debate tonight will be on the News and Citizen Facebook page. Same big family though, so. All right, so without further ado, let's hear from the candidates. You will each have 2 minutes for your opening statements, and we'll start with Sabel Courtney. 2 minutes, Joe.
Well, first, I'd like to thank the Stowe Reporter, Jessie and Tommy, and Representative Scheuermann. I've lived here for nearly 30 years, having moved to Stowe with my husband, Tim, and son, Will, in 1990. And Tim and I had led a peripatetic life due to his career as a golf pro and mine as a music director and radio. And we knew that we found a home which we could commit to for the rest of our lives. We immediately immersed ourselves in every community and volunteer opportunity. For nearly 10 years, I promoted Stowe internationally and domestically as PR and international marketing manager for Stowe Area Association. I was events liaison, and I organized many events in our village, and I'm co-founder of the Stowe Theater Guild and have performed in dozens of musical productions. I was trustee and board chair of Stowe Free Library, co-founder of the Stowe Weekend of Hope, which was entered into the congressional record by Senator Sanders, and I'm currently trustee and development committee chair for the Vermont Arts Council. I've worked with a myriad of arts and tourism organizations to bring vitality and economic development to Stowe over the years. Most recently, I traveled nationally to thank volunteers and nonprofits as the Farmers Ambassador for Cabot's Department of Gratitude. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate to the Democratic National Convention in 2016 and was organizer and stage manager for 4 Vermont Women's March events. You know, we as Vermonters are experiencing tremendous uncertainty due to COVID. Compounding this experience for so many of us are underlying inequities that prevent us from thriving. Stowe's my home, and I care deeply about a future that serves us all. Everyone is entitled to, and I am ready to advocate for those values for all of us. I care deeply about Stowe and the values we represent, and these are community, compassion, and equity for all. I don't take the value of the title representative lightly, and this is one of the reasons that I believe I'm best suited to serve in Montpelier.
Thank you, Joe. Next up, opening statement from Heidi Scheuermann. Heidi, 2 minutes, please. Heidi, you're on mute, so I'm going to start your clock.
My apologies.
Not a problem.
Sorry. Thank you, Tommy, and thank you to the Stowe Reporter for hosting this debate. And thank you to Joe for running this year. For those who don't know me, I was born and raised right here in Stowe, and it has been my distinct privilege to serve the people of Stowe in the Vermont House for the past 14 years. We are now facing serious challenges, and we need serious people to address them. We need people with experience, people who have proven leadership skills, people who put principle ahead of politics, and people ahead of party. I have demonstrated this commitment to Stowe time and again as I've advocated fiercely for the people of this great community in the legislature and have been a dedicated leader and volunteer right here at home. Over the last 7 months, I have focused my attention on the COVID-19 state of emergency and all that's come with it. And from the outset, I understood that we needed a local effort right here at home. So I founded the Stowe C19 Community Response Team and helped to coordinate action plans locally. In the House, I've worked diligently with people from across the political spectrum to achieve success. I've led the fight for increased investment in and attention to the tourism and hospitality industry, including taking the lead in organizing the Vermont Legislative Tourism Caucus and the annual Tourism Day at the State House. I've advocated for and supported responsible environmental stewardship policies, including a comprehensive plan to clean our state's waterways, Vermont's goal of achieving 90% renewable energy by 2050, and millions of dollars in incentives for Vermonters to purchase electric vehicles. I've pushed for responsible state spending by making sure we work together to ensure fiscal discipline and make important investments where needed, all while protecting the most vulnerable. I've demanded policies that encourage private sector economic growth and jobs, including much needed access to capital and capital reinvestment, the elimination of the cloud tax, support for independent contractors, and workforce development and recruitment efforts. And I continue to lead the charge for comprehensive education funding reform and property tax relief, and against the one-size-fits-all big warehouse approach to education from Montpelier. Looking forward, the path to recovery from this pandemic requires the kind of commitment and dedication I have displayed over my time in office. So I humbly ask for your continued support.
Thank you, Heidi.
Great, now we're going to ask you a question. And this one, we're going to start with Joe. So I can repeat the question after, just let me know. And given that the coronavirus pandemic is likely to be with us for at least the beginning of the next legislative section, what are your priorities for next year's budget? And you've got 2 minutes for this one.
Thank you. We have just been absolutely gobsmacked by COVID-19, and it's probably the most serious challenge that we've ever faced. So the things that have really come to the fore within our recovery, and these are things that I am committed to, are healthcare, paid family leave, broadband, of course, and also childcare. In terms of healthcare, this has just been laid bare. When folks don't have healthcare, and if we have COVID going into 2019 or 2020, 21, what year is it? I think we're going to have a big problem. So we have to get our hands around some kind of healthcare that will actually help everyone. Childcare is another big issue. I know that fabulous work has been done on that, and we have to continue. I know we have the childcare hubs, but in terms of, we have to take care of our people first, and I firmly believe that. Broadband is a huge issue, and we will work together. I know that there are CUDs that they're working on. I know Stowe is taking a back seat right now with the CUD in Lamoille County, and we'll take a look at that. But broadband is essential for telehealth, which we're going to need in 2021, for education, for businesses, for new residents moving here, and right down the line. So those are really the priorities for COVID. It's going to be recovery into the next year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Heidi, you've got 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. So short term is continued recovery, continued support for our businesses and families right here in Stowe and in this community in Vermont. I'm hopeful, obviously, that there will be another federal stimulus package coming. We absolutely need to get money into the hands of our businesses so that they can continue their work to pay their employees, to stay open. And clearly, obviously, their employees and their families depend on them staying open and staying sustainable, staying successful. So we have provided significant amount of money, funds to our small businesses, including in the hospitality and event industry, probably the two sectors most greatly devastated by this pandemic, and ones that we count on right here in Stowe. Another $77 million is coming out. I will say our budget, our state spending is going to be critical. We need to make sure we live within our means. Again, hopefully there'll be another federal stimulus package soon that will include some funds for municipal government, for example, and state government. But this is not the time to raise taxes on our small businesses and families. This isn't a time to increase fees or put on new mandates. They are struggling right now. We all know that. We need to continue to support them. And that is my priority, is to get the support into the hands of these small businesses so that they can continue to employ our local families and continue to get money out to them.
I didn't have to give either one of you the 20-second warning. Good job. All right, Tommy, your question's next.
All right. This one is for Heidi. Heidi, what strategies or initiatives would you recommend to help jumpstart Vermont's struggling tourism and hospitality industries? Clearly, this is something that's very important to the town of Stowe, but the whole state.
Absolutely. And I have been a champion of the tourism hospitality industry throughout my years in the House and will continue to do so. Again, as I mentioned, we did hundreds of millions of dollars get out to people and our small businesses, our hospitality industry, restaurants, lodges, and retailers through the Department of Tax grants. Another 77 million is being prepped to release soon, and I will certainly keep people posted on that as it's released. But there isn't enough grant money in the world to last forever. We need to get people through the next 6 months, hopefully defeat the virus globally in order to ensure our travel and tourism industry rebounds. In the meantime, I'm hopeful that we'll continue to reopen safely, that we continue to invite safe tourism to Stowe and to Vermont, and that people continue to come. But in general, this is going to be a long and difficult road and road to recovery. We have to listen to our small businesses and understand their significant challenges. And like I said before, this is no time for tax increases, the creation of a multi-million-dollar state program, or policies that will place additional cost burdens on our small businesses. They need our support now more than ever, not more costly taxes, fees, and mandates.
Thank you, Heidi. Joe Sabel Courtney, same question. What strategies or initiatives would you recommend to help jumpstart Vermont's struggling tourism and hospitality industries?
Well, I think you'll find when I was at Stowe Area Association, creativity, collaboration were absolutely key. We partnered. Partnerships are essential in terms of marketing, working with the safe counties, people who can come and go easily right now. You can do things without a lot of money. And we prove that at Stowe Area Association. So in terms of strategies, I would have to take a look at the research and see what we're doing right now. But I would be absolutely thrilled to sit on the tourism caucus, which I believe Megan Smith actually started in 2009. And yeah, okay, so I'm getting a no there. Yeah, so I would be happy to sit on that caucus and make myself available, make my expertise, my relationships, and any connections that I have. And I have to say that in 2001, international marketing just went south, and we stuck with it, and we got it back again because we didn't quit. So international marketing in the future is also key. That's a real tough one because of what's going on in the world right now, but hopefully, but we have to look long distance. We have to look into the future. We can't just look 6 months down the road. We have to find ways in the future and partnerships that we can develop now. And they're all over the country. We're not in a vacuum. I worked with so many organizations across the country. So there are ways that we can do this. And this is my interest. I have served businesses in Stowe, many of whom are actually Heidi's supporters, and I brought them business over and over again, and they know how hard I work and what I can do when I put my mind to it. So this is exciting for me. Tourism I love it. It's absolutely the joy of my life. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, so now you guys get to play journalists for a few minutes, if you don't mind. We're going to make you ask each other a question. Since there's the two of you, we know who you're going to ask, but we don't know what you're going to ask. So the way that this works is we're going to have Joe go first, ask Heidi a question. Heidi, you will then have 90 seconds to answer. I'll give you a 20-second warning if you get to that point, and then we'll do the reverse.
Great, thank you. Heidi, okay, so in 2018, when you debated Marina Meerberg, the question was asked about Brett Kavanaugh. And you demurred from actually answering that question. But I have to say that because of what's on the table with the possible appointment of Amy Coney Bennett, which is healthcare, same-sex marriage, and women's reproductive rights, which could be in peril, and we may have to pick up that slack. Do you support your fellow Republicans' effort to push through this appointment of Amy Coney Barrett?
Thank you for the question, Joe. I appreciate it. So a precedent was set by the US Senate in 2016, a precedent I didn't agree with, but it was a precedent nonetheless. I believe there should have been hearings and an up or down vote in the Senate on President Obama's nominee to the Supreme Court, Merrick Garland. There wasn't because the leadership of the Senate argued it was too close to the election. Ill-advised as that precedent setting was, in my view, the Senate should be consistent with it now. There should not be a vote on this Supreme Court nominee before the election.
Thank you.
I will also add, actually, Joe, I am certainly supportive of a woman's right to choose. I have been since I ran first in 2006, and I've made that clear in 2018. We actually passed a bill in 2019 that will allow, regardless of if there is a decision on the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, we are in Vermont. The right to choose is in place for Vermont women.
Thank you.
And I voted in support of that.
And you would vote in support if this comes to, if Amy Coney Bryant goes through and this is in peril, you would vote to also preserve that right.
Again, we already did. We voted in 2019, both on a law that would ensure, that would put into law the current practices currently in place in Vermont, and I voted in favor of that, and also a constitutional amendment that would also put it in. This was done. We're in response, obviously it was in response to the fear that some Vermonters have that the Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade. So this law will ensure that even if that were to happen, Vermont state law will remain legal in the state of Vermont. And I believe, as I've said before, that that it's critical that abortion be safe and legal, but as importantly, I hope it to be rare. I'm pleased, frankly, that the number of abortions performed in Vermont has decreased over the last 15 years, and I hope that downward trend continues.
Time's up.
Great.
I certainly support a woman's right to choose, and voted twice, both in favor of the law and in favor of the constitutional amendment to do that.
Now, Heidi, your turn to ask a question.
Oh,
And
jeez, I forgot.
I'm gonna give
Um,
Joe 2 minutes because I actually gave you 2 minutes with the follow-up. So.
Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay. Okay, Joe. So you mentioned it in your opening statement as well, but you talk about making Stowe equal for all. There are many perspectives about what equity means to different people and what it should look like. Many supporters of Act 68, our education funding law, felt that the education funding system, this education funding system would make things equal for all. Many people thought that Act 46, the consolidation of school districts, would enhance equity. So I would like to know specifically what you mean by making Stowe equal for all.
Okay, and Joe, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you, Heidi. I'm happy. Affordable housing is a huge issue. In terms of, I have young people who have left Stowe, who grew up here, who still work here, and they can't buy a house here. They can't, what is it, $800,000 average price of a home in Stowe? I'm not sure when this happened, when we went that way, but that's what I'm talking about. I'm also talking about pretty much it's being affordable to live here. That's really, in terms of housing, in terms of living and thriving life. I'd love to see more diversity here. Again, this is a goal in the future that I think we can address, to be more welcoming to everyone, because we are affordable. And that's how we make, that's how we make our communities not only diverse, but also thriving. And when we have a lot of people who actually partake in our municipal government, who sit on commissions, who sit on boards, and who volunteer, who step up and volunteer. And that means having folks from every walk of life and every age, every gender, and every, a lot of diversity. So that's really what I talk about in terms of equity for Stowe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both.
Okay, back to us. This one is for Heidi. You just mentioned Act 46. Last month, as you know, the State Board of Education approved the first Act 46 divorce, allowing the previously merged Southern Vermont towns of Reedsboro and Halifax to go their own ways when it comes to education governance. Something that this may have opened the door for the legislature to step in and have a say in keeping Act 46 mergers intact, or not. Knowing how divisive the forced merger between Stowe and the Morristown School District was over the past couple of years, what role should the legislature play in revisiting Act 46?
Thank you very much for this important question. I will say, first of all, that because of how Act 46 was crafted, our particular merger, the merger of EMU and Stowe, would not necessarily, and is not mentioned in any of the two sections of law that allow for these merger divorces. Communities that voted to merge can vote to unmerge, and then communities that were forced to merge in previous laws are allowed to unmerge, vote to unmerge. We are not. Some argue, and attorneys that I've spoken to argue that this is an equal protection issue under our Constitution, and I think we should explore that and see if it is. But I already actually have a draft request in to Leg Council for next year to put into place a law that would allow us, and I'm not necessarily recommending this, but it allows our school board to decide whether or not they want to go through with an Act 46 merger. So I have a draft request in already. As you know, Tommy, and most of Stowe knows, I fought fiercely. I was the lead opponent to Act 46, the forced consolidation of school districts. I pleaded with my colleagues in the House and Senate to not approve this, to make sure that at the very least we had a say, that legislators were going to be held accountable for this, but instead the legislative leadership and Senator Shumlin, Governor Shumlin at the time, proceeded on this to ensure that the state board could actually eliminate school districts. And we fought against that. We fought for an alternative structure under Act 46, and unfortunately the state board decided that that we would be forced to merge. So I will continue my advocacy on behalf of the Stowe local schools and our district in general, certainly in Morrisville and Elmore, to make sure that they are the best schools they can be, and whether that is a merged district or an unmerged district is really the purview of our school board, I think, and the people in the community of this, the community voters. But I will support in any way I can. And again, I already have a draft request in to fix Act 46 so that we do have the opportunity. And again, not necessarily that I'm recommending it, but I want to make sure that we have all tools in our toolbox.
Right. Yeah, there's only two of you, but try to keep to the 2 minutes. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can't tell if you can hear me when I'm interrupting, so that's all right. I'm overly polite. I feel like, remember last night was like, thank you, Vice President. Thank you, Vice President. Joe Sabel Courtney, knowing the how divisive the forced merger was between Stowe and the Morristown School District over the past couple of years, what role should the legislature play in revisiting Act 46?
Having my son went to the Stowe school, it was just the Stowe High School. We were not merged at that point. And it had its good points and it had its not great points. We probably could have used, a few more AP courses, whatever, a few more activities. I understand that is better now. What role the legislature should play? I will have to say that I will listen and learn, because my expertise, like Heidi, has spent a long time working on this, and I haven't had that luxury to work with the legislature. But again, listening and learning, collaborating for the best for our kids, from K through 12, preschool, higher education, all education. We need to really buckle down. And again, COVID is going to get in our way. We don't know what's going to happen, and we have to be flexible. We have to be resilient. If all we're focusing on is how we get kids through the school year, and will they have to make things up next year? I think that's going to take a lot of our energy as well. So I would listen and learn, and I'd love to talk to constituents more about it, because they're the ones who really have the say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. I have to go turn a light on because apparently it's getting dark here.
And for the 20-second thing, if you want, I can raise this like we're playing soccer and you get a yellow card.
Did I go over? Did I go over?
No, for some reason Zoom doesn't like us butting in.
Jesse, can you remind me how long we have for the responses? 20 seconds?
Yeah, so once we tell you, you've got 20 seconds left.
My apologies. Thank you.
No. With two people, it's a lot easier to go over and be okay. So my question, we're going to start with Joe. There have been expectations for substantial changes to Act 250, Vermont's land use law. A slimmed down version of those changes was enacted, largely dealing with forest fragmentation. Was that sufficient? If not, what other changes to Act 250 would you pursue? And for this one, you're going to have 2 minutes.
Act 250 is a pretty old law, and I think that reform is probably a good idea. I have to just say that for me, with COVID, I spent a lot of time in the woods this year because I didn't see anybody, and I felt very safe, and it was great solace for me. And that was the Stowe Land Trust. And I thank them so much and I'm a supporter of theirs, because without that, I don't know, I think it could have been really tough. So it's important to mitigate the fragmentation. It's important to not overdevelop. It's time to modernize Act 250. It addresses climate change, and it will spur growth in all the right places. So we really should all want this. I believe, from what I understand, it does not touch Act 250 jurisdiction. So we need to move forward on this, because we need to, saving our forests is vitally important for vast riders and for mountain biking and for all of our recreation and for loggers and forestry and habitat. So it's important that we do modernize this. I understand that it is for this year that it's done, and that will be revisited next year. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And Heidi, same question, 2 minutes.
Sure. Thank you. So first of all, that Act 250 reform bill, so-called Act 250 reform bill that the governor vetoed the other day, is not an Act 250 reform bill. It's not even close. This is Act 250 is the statewide land use law, and it's important in the protection of our natural environment and working landscape, but it does need to be reformed. It's 50 years old. I was pleased at the beginning of the year when two unlikely partners came together, Vermont Natural Resources Council and the governor came together and unveiled a joint proposal to reform Act 250. Unfortunately, some tweaks were made. This proposal was balanced. It was on the head of a pin, and changes were made, and it ended up being not something that the governor could support. What happened later with this particular Act 250 reform bill is not reform at all for Act 250. We need to go back to the drawing board and come back together and have some give and take and make some changes to Act 250 to make it more predictable, less costly, more fair, and what have you. So I think that's the goal for next year.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize. I wrote that question up, and I should note that the changes were not enacted technically. They were passed by the legislature, but as Heidi notes, that it was shot down by the governor. So thanks for that, Heidi. Next is for Heidi. Heidi, more than half of Stowe's overall property portfolio is owned by non-resident homeowners. One of the largest percentages in the state. Yet there's been something of a trigger effect for people when they see New York or Massachusetts license plates in town this year, even if they own homes here. How does the lawmaker reconcile the need for tax revenue from out-of-state visitors or property owners with this seemingly increasing levels of xenophobia for Americans that just happen to be out of state? 2 minutes.
So, thank you, Tommy. I will say this, things at the beginning of this pandemic, people were scared, people were concerned, understandably so. We didn't know enough about this disease. We still don't know all about it, but people were scared, and I understand that. But I applaud our town public safety officer, the chief public safety officer, Kyle Walker, for addressing this, making sure that people knew the facts, welcomed people, but understood that we had rules in place and guidelines in place that they had to adhere to. And I think we have done overall a fantastic job in this town, setting a tone. Again, it was problematic at the beginning. I publicly went out and talked about it with people and tried to make sure that we were welcoming to our visitors, making sure that they knew what our guidelines were and what the restrictions were. And what they were supposed to do. And our public safety officer, again, Kyle Walker, did a tremendous job and has done a tremendous job throughout this, setting that tone. And I think our businesses, our locals, our community has done just that. There is such thing as safe tourism. And certainly those who own property here in town should feel welcome in this town. They are a part of our community. They're part of our nonprofits. They provide funds to help our nonprofits all around, and they should feel welcome in this town. So, and again, overall, I think we're doing a tremendous job as a community leading.
Thank you, Heidi. Joe, do you need the question again? That was
Yes, please. Yes, please.
the more than half of Stowe's overall property portfolio is owned by non-resident homeowners. That's one of the largest percentages in the state. Yet there's been something of a trigger effect for people when they see New York or Massachusetts license plates in town this year. How does the lawmaker reconcile the need for tax revenue from out-of-state visitors or property owners with seemingly increasing levels of xenophobia for out-of-staters?
Well, xenophobia is never okay. We're all in the same country, and we're all in the same town at one time. I really believe that we have, we need to be welcoming across the board. Again, COVID threw a big monkey wrench into this because a lot of people have left New York City. My son lives in New York City. It's kind of a ghost town. So people have left here, but will they stay in their second homes longer than 6 months, or will they go back? We're really kind of in limbo with this. So there's no excuse for not being welcoming. We are a tourist town, and we live and die by our tourism. My understanding is, though, that there is a big percentage of homes that are owned and that they're rented out for Airbnb. So again, that's probably folks coming to, you know, just to be here for a month or two. But I would work with I would love to work with our real estate companies to have a welcoming kind of, I mean, welcome wagon is an old term, but there are communities around Vermont who are actually doing welcome wagon to make sure that people are welcomed, and that I don't think we do as well as we could, because we are welcoming and we're friendly. And I think we definitely, if we wanted to go down that way, get volunteers to talk to people, I think we did an awesome job with COVID in terms of getting the word out. And people seemed to come here and they knew that this was a safe place, and they didn't want to, you know, throw a monkey wrench in that. They wanted to stay safe, and they wanted for us to be safe here. It's a compliment that they felt safe and that they could come here. And for the most part, I saw people even on paths with masks. They got the message, and yeah, I would continue. I would try to just be more welcoming in many ways, and there are many creative ways we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so we're going to do that thing again where you ask each other questions. This time we're going to start with Heidi, and I think we can do a 2-minute answer period afterward. So Heidi, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Joe, so in your campaign, you continue to advocate for certain things with regard to what businesses should do, how much they should pay their employees, what benefits they should offer, even advocating for policies to mandate those from Montpelier. Have you ever had your own private business with with employees on payroll and how many employees?
No, I already stated I did not.
Okay, thank you.
So Joe, you've got 1 minute 55 seconds if you want to fill it.
No, I never have. In terms of the businesses know that I support them. On the other hand, I understand the challenges for businesses, especially now. No one understands it more than I do. I have a lot of friends with businesses, with employees and sole proprietors not working across the board. But when we look at how do we solve this long term, this is the question. Do we seize this opportunity, and do we say living wage? What is a living wage? We're going up to $11.75 in January of 2021. Right now it's $10.96 for our minimum wage. That's $1,500 a month for someone who wants to live here. That's practically impossible. So what's going to happen is they're going to rely on a safety net. Are they going to get food assistance? Are they going to get subsidized housing? So we have to figure this out, because we also need our employees. We need folks to come here to live and to invest in the community in all ways. And that's really hard to do on the minimum wage. Do I have an answer for how to fix that? No. Do I want to put all of our folks out of business? Of course not. But we have to be creative and collaborative and talk about it. And we have to come up with an answer somehow, or we're just going to hemorrhage people. They're going to leave the state. They're going to leave town. And I don't think that's acceptable. That's not the Stowe that I moved to. That's not the Stowe that I think we all want. So thank you.
Okay. And Joe, you can actually stay unmuted because it's your turn for a question.
Thank you. As the owner of a for-profit housing property, Heidi, and development company, how do you see us addressing the affordable housing issue? What legislation have you sponsored or will you sponsor for affordable housing? Clearly, you know this is on my mind, so.
Sure, I do know it's on your mind. And just to be clear, I starting in 2013, when I saw some perceptions of conflicts of interest, I realized at that time that it's inappropriate for me to sponsor affordable housing bills, even if there is no actual conflict. The perception of conflict is there. So I haven't sponsored any, and I recuse myself from some of those votes when I feel that the perception of conflict is there. But yes, I am the owner and manager of long-term residential rental housing, not short-term, including low-income housing for the elderly, people with disabilities, and families. So I know well the issue. I agree completely with you that we need more housing in Stowe for the people who work here and would like to live here. I've seen it in my own business, the families that I serve as a landlord. I work with them as much as I can to ensure they have opportunities to purchase here, and that I give them as many opportunities to get out of leases if they need to in order to do that, because I want them to purchase here and live here and raise their families here. In general, with regard to housing, our housing ladder, several rungs on our housing ladder is missing. When you start with housing, you have an apartment, then you buy your first home. Generally, this is historically how it's been. Then you might buy a larger home for a larger family, and then you sell and downsize. So those are the rungs of the ladder in housing. And I think that some of those are missing, and that's the challenge. We have lots of higher end housing here in Stowe available, but it's not available for working Vermonters who want to live and raise their family here in Stowe. I would say that we should be, when I was on the select board, we had payment plans. We had payment plans in place. I'm sorry, Jesse, did you just give me a signal?
I did.
Okay, my apologies. I would just continue to work on incentivizing the development of housing opportunities for all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go with some more questions from us. And this one is for Heidi. Heidi, the pandemic and subsequent turn to home offices and remote learning have brought the need for strong broadband to the forefront of the Vermont conversation. How will you work to ensure Vermonters, including those in rural areas, have access to affordable high-speed internet they need to work and learn? You're muted, Heidi.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Tommy. This is critical. We've known for years that the lack of high-speed, high-quality internet is one of the most critical issues facing us, and it certainly came to a head this year. Unfortunately, it has been and continues to be a really difficult nut to crack, including in this community. First of all, I just want to be clear, everybody understands federal law expressly precludes states from having any authority over wireless and broadband services. So unlike telephone services where we have authority to demand last mile coverage, that's not the case with broadband. So that's a challenge. In addition, the providers, because many times build out costs don't have the financial payback for telecom companies, that build out becomes that much more challenging. We have a local provider here in Stowe. Well, I won't get into that, but we did pass a bill on the Energy and Technology Committee on which I serve. We started addressing it more realistically, giving tools we passed this in 2019, giving tools to communities and regions to develop communication union districts to address their challenges locally and regionally. I was pleased with that. We are giving them tools necessary to do so and funding necessary to do so, because the state cannot financially absorb the cost of expanding broadband statewide. So we did that. I went to the town of Stowe after passage of that. I met with them, with the Department of Public Service, to try to see what opportunities might be available for us here in town. They were reluctant to do anything at that point, the town was, but I'm pleased that this past summer, they are now part of actually the feasibility study for the Lamoille FiberNet, which is our local CUD. And hopefully that feasibility study will show that we can get expansion and upgrades right here in this community, and then we will join that CUD. We also have a local provider here in town that is doing a lot of upgrades, but again, the demand is a challenge for them as well. So I will continue to do all we can, but everybody has to recognize the limitations as well with regard to our what we are allowed to do as a state. President Obama tried an executive order to allow states to do it, to get involved in broadband. That executive order didn't go any further than his proposal. So that's a challenge. Thank you. Sorry.
Joe, you mentioned it earlier in the debate. I believe it may have been in your opening statement. So how will you work to ensure Vermonters, including those in rural areas, have access to the affordable and high-speed internet that they need to be able to work and learn?
Well, first of all, so much has changed since Obama was president, namely COVID and the great need for it. So let's first of all elect Joe Biden, and we might be able to perhaps get another executive order and actually see this through. But leveraging loans and grants and incentives, and I believe we're getting federal funding, some federal funding for this. But again, I don't want to look at the limitations. I would really like to think more about what else is possible and not where the opportunities are, and really be hopeful about this, because we can't, our kids simply can't study like this. Our families can't, our businesses can't thrive. And again, telehealth is going to be very cost. There are just so many benefits, and this wasn't so dire before COVID, but again, we're getting signals from this, and we really need to make efforts to fix it. Obviously, I'm not in the legislature. I don't know all of the details and the ins and outs, but I do know that I would work to find the opportunities to fix this, because we just have for most people, broadband is a challenge, a big challenge, and people aren't going to stay here. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, my turn. Given the current political climate, do you think you can effectively work across the aisle with members of the opposing party when the time comes? So we're going to start this question with Joe, and you have 2 minutes.
Yes, of course, absolutely. I've worked with people across aisles when I wasn't there. I mean, I don't necessarily look at a party. I look at the issue, and I look at where we both stand on it. And I think it's vitally important to develop relationships with people, not based on their party or what their but what their real values are. And yes, the answer to the question is absolutely, I can work across the aisle. I really try to adhere to the golden rule. I'd really try to not judge, not to badmouth or to denigrate anyone or anything. So I would take the high road and absolutely try to work. Our values may differ and the outcome may differ, but the answer is yes, of course I can.
And Heidi, you've got 2 minutes.
Sure. I'm not sure if I need 2 minutes, but I think my experience and my track record of working across the aisle is clear. Every year and throughout the year, as I work on things off session, I'm consistently working with people from across the political spectrum. I founded a political action committee with a Democratic colleague of mine to help support legislators of both Republicans and Democrats and independents, and provided endorsements and funds for their campaigns. That was just one thing that I've done along with colleagues of mine in the legislature. I continuously work with people, whether it's on spending issues, whether it's on my energy and technology committee, or on other issues important to the community of Stowe and Vermont. Most especially, I will just highlight again the tourism work that I do, tourism and hospitality, and the tourism caucus, of which I'm chair, and my vice chair is a representative, a Democratic representative from South Burlington. But this is a caucus that is full of Republicans, Democrats, independents, and people from across the political spectrum. And we advocate for tourism and hospitality industry, for policies that will help those and support that industry, and for additional funding. And we do that on a nonpartisan basis, and I'll continue that work come January.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this question is for Heidi. Heidi, public education spending continues to rise, and there are several notable school budgets that were shot down by voters this year, such as Harwood and the South Burlington School District twice. At the same time, the Vermont State College system is in serious financial trouble. There's been talk about maybe relooking at things and going with a kindergarten through college sort of education structure in Vermont. Where do you see common ground in being able to tackle both public school funding and public college affordability?
Oh, thank you, Tommy. This has been a battle I have been fighting for 14 years. K through 12 public, our education funding system and property tax relief. We now spend $1.7 billion on K through 12 education. And there's, I think, 80,000 students. That's an incredible amount of money. Meanwhile, outcomes from the time we passed Act 60 in 1997, Act 68, have not increased in any way, or improved in any way, I should say. And that's unfortunate. So it's really not necessarily about the amount of money you spend on education that makes it a quality education. And that is something we have to recognize. I believe strongly, and I've advocated this to both the higher education community and the early education community, that they should be part of the challenge, that they should take on the challenge of education funding reform, so that more of that money can be fairly spent in not only K through 12, but monies toward our higher education system and our early education system. It's critical that we have some lifelong learning plans. It's critical that we have Vermont State Colleges in place and sustainable. We are in the midst of a restructuring plan now for the state colleges, which I think is necessary and good. We want to make sure we have programs that people want to enroll in, that they want to learn in. And we must make sure that our campuses are there for the people, especially in those rural communities that surround these campuses in Johnson, for example, and Linden. So I'm going to continue to fight for the state college system, but I do hope, and I advocated again this time when we were going through the challenge of the Vermont State Colleges, I advocated again for them to get involved in the challenge of education funding reform, and I'm hopeful that they will come on board so that we can reform our education funding system to provide the funds necessary to all of our education system, and provide property tax relief to all of our taxpayers.
Thank you, Heidi. Joe.
There's really nothing there to argue with. There's no question. I was having this discussion today on how absolutely complicated the funding mechanism is for education. And can we take some things that are not necessarily focused on education, like human services, out of that? Can we reapportion? And again, this is being creative. I hate the word out the box. I don't like that phrase, but okay, out of the box. What resources can we use in our region and in our state and around the country to figure this out? And how do other folks do it? How do other areas do it? The state colleges are vitally important, not only because of, I love the town of Johnson. I spent a lot of time there when I worked with the Center for America's First Horse, and with Johnson State, we did classes there and clinics. And it's vital to that town. I don't even know what would happen and it's a lovely place. So that's a challenge for them. Of course it has to stay. And it also gives us, our children, access so that they don't have to leave the state. And it also allows us to, maybe we can share some resources, obviously CCV and tourism and hospitality classes, and really start bringing kids into the system so that we have workers. But yeah, I did, K through 12 preschool education and lifelong learning. Elders, it's very important for folks as we get older. So we probably need to look at a different funding mechanism and take it apart. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so we are on to round 3 of Ask Each Other a Question. This time we're going to start with Joe, who will ask Heidi. So
Heidi, you may have kind of touched on this, but because we're both tourism focused, will you be bringing forward a new tourism funding bill if elected for the next biennium? And if so, how will you be able to persuade a Democratic majority House to support your bill, especially when so many things are asking for our attention?
That's a great question, Joe. I appreciate it. So my plan for tourism for next year is to work with the Legislative Tourism Caucus to develop a proposal to move forward in this coming legislature. We have people on that in that caucus who are in the Economic Development Committee, people who are on the Appropriations Committee, and several other committees of import. And so my plan is to work with my vice chair and other members of that committee. So we have a bipartisan, a tripartisan, a nonpartisan approach to tourism and tourism funding. I believe strongly that marketing and an increase to marketing has to happen in order for us to attract the visitors we need to recover here in Vermont. I know that the governor supports an increase in tourism funding, and he has advanced that he's put that forward in his proposals, budget proposals in the past. This is going to be a very difficult year, so I cannot tell you if Governor Scott is going to propose that again this year, although he did propose significant marketing in the COVID dollars to get to for marketing for people in state and in those safe counties. So I'm hopeful, but I can't tell you what the bill will look like because it's premature. It needs to be worked on with a large coalition of people and a nonpartisan coalition of people to put it together and then advocate for it.
Thank you.
So my question, you also kind of touched on this in the last question, that Jesse had for you, but as she mentioned, being in the legislature requires tenacity and the willingness to compromise. What have been your biggest challenges you've experienced, and when you've compromised in order to reach a goal in your work life?
Oh my gosh, my work life is so incredibly varied.
I didn't mean it to sound like an interview question at a job.
That's exactly what it's like. It's like, okay,
it sounded like that. Sorry. But
okay. Oh gosh. Okay. So let me first of all say that I've been in the theater for a long time. There's nothing like theater to force you into compromise and collaboration. I've had so many different hats that I've worn, including tourism, including music industry. So it's the biggest challenges are probably personality, and it's probably making peace with people and just understanding, taking that high road so that you look at the best in people and the gifts that they can bring and the skills that they can bring to actually solve the problem and to get where you want to go. So a specific instance, boy, I can tell you a lot of creative things we did that were pretty off the wall and fun, but in a specific instance, I probably can't tell you across the board, but that would be my answer though. Thanks. That's a great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks to you both.
I mean, well, actually, this is kind of a job interview, isn't it? I mean, so it's a couple thousand people are on the hiring committee. So
That's right.
well, I can't believe it. We've asked you a dozen questions and you've gone through them. So this is time for you both to share your closing thoughts with us. We went in alphabetical order between the two of you to start with, so we'll go reverse alphabetical order to finish. Heidi Scheuermann, give us a minute of your thoughts.
Sure. So thank you, Tommy and Jesse and the Stowe Reporter again for hosting this debate. And to Joe, of course, thank you for running. I know how much it takes out of your time and energy and how much it takes in general for running to run. So, and thanks to all of you for joining us here online. As I said in my opening, I'm proud of the work I've done on your behalf through my years in the Vermont House, but there remains a lot more to do. That's especially true as we continue to navigate the challenges of this pandemic and as we work hard to emerge successfully from it. I promise to continue to do all I can to help. I promise to be your conduit and personal advocate as you navigate the bureaucracy of unemployment, recovery grants, and so much more. I promise to continue to be the strong, experienced, independent voice in Montpelier on behalf of the families and businesses of Stowe. And I promise to be the committed leader and volunteer right here at home. Know this, I don't represent a political party or any special interest group, and I don't play politics. Stowe is my hometown, the place I love. And if given the privilege to serve again, I'll continue my fierce advocacy on your behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Joe, take us home.
Woo. All right, Vermonters are in this moment most concerned with COVID recovery and healthcare. That's what we found. And I'll lead with my values and advocate for our community so that all of us have access to that recovery and all that it affords. And that's economic growth, affordable, accessible, and efficient healthcare, broadband, housing, a livable wage and robust childcare and education, and social justice. And I look forward to the opportunity because if nothing else, we need to look at this as an opportunity to create a more vital and inclusive Vermont. I have a history of showing up and listening and working well with others, united in a common purpose. And I'll bring these skills to address our challenges. As I said, I don't take the word representative lightly, and I'll work tirelessly as I have my entire life for businesses, for families, for our elders, and for all residents of Stowe. And to this younger generation, I believe that what is important to you is important to me. Future and have your back. Thank you very much, Tommy, Jesse, and the Stowe Reporter, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. And I ask for your vote. My website is joeforstowe.com if you want to know anything else about me. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to you both. You did a great job.
Are we done?
We're done.
That was okay. Heidi, that was okay.
Are we off the air?
We're still live.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Jesse.
Hi, Heidi, thank you. This was a pleasure. Thank you.
Good.
Thanks, everybody. Can we leave now?
Yeah, I mean, just to let everybody know, we have a second round of debates coming up at 7:45. The Lamoille-Washington House debate. That'll be on the News and Citizen Facebook page. So this is on the Stowe Reporter Facebook page right now. So we're going to switch over to that one at 7:45. Hope to see you all there.
Tommy, I love you like a brother, but I'm done with debates for today. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thank you.